Good morning, everybody. Robin Ayub here from the Localization Fireside Chat, and welcome to another episode. Welcome, everybody who joined me today. We are recording episode 259, believe it or not. July 29th today. It's hot everywhere. Canada feels a little bit like fall right now in Toronto, but people that say to me, don't say the word fall because that jinxes this summer and make the summer go away pretty quickly. So I'm not saying the word, but it feels like 20 degrees outside. Where my guest is, though, it's a completely different story. My guest, Noémi Beres, and Noémi Beres is joining me from Cyprus, where currently I'm hearing is like almost 40 degrees Celsius, 37 to 40 degrees Celsius. It's like an oven outside, and hopefully she's in an air-conditioned area. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show, Noémi.
Thank you so much, Robin, and I'm honored to be here today with you. Yeah, it's like an oven outside. Yeah, that's right, and the AC is on full blast, so nice temperature inside.
So today we're going to be talking a little bit for the audience. We're going to be talking about a topic that we have not yet talked about on the channel here, which is very important. As you know, I mean, I started the podcast about 3 years ago, and I started it, the story, right? So not to bore you with the details, I started it with post-COVID. I felt like before COVID, I felt like I was out all the time. I was buying coffee to my customers all the time. I was literally, putting hundreds of thousands of kilometers on my car every year, trying to figure out going from meeting to meeting, meeting customers face to face. And that was fine. During and post COVID, the culture of meetings have shifted. The culture, how we meet others, has shifted. And everybody can agree to that. Everybody can attest to that. People moved outside of the urban area. They moved outside to rural areas. Traveling to and from to meetings become a little bit more complex. And most people that you want to meet now, they're opting for behind the camera. I noticed that. So what I did is I started something called Coffee with Robin. I opened my calendar. Anybody can drop a meeting in my calendar. That was in 2023. And everybody can jump in on a call with me. I don't care what they want to talk about, to be honest with you. And this is early on before I launched the podcast. So people were calling me like whatever it's on their mind, right? So either they're looking for a job or perhaps they want to talk about the family and personal stuff. They trusted me. Those are trusted ones. Or they want to talk about a business challenge that they're facing. So what I thought we did at the time, I said, okay, well, let's do this, flip it around and say, can we record these conversations? They could be useful to somebody. So I started asking for permission to record these conversations. And if I went back just before we recorded, we started the recording today, Noémi, and I looked at the first podcast I did, it's embarrassing now. The learning curve that I went through from the first one to where I am right now, it's unbelievable, to be honest with you, the amount of knowledge that I gained personally through the process. So here we are today, and my guest and my guest Noémi she is a co-founder of a company called Podcast Connections. What they do is they go get customers of theirs who would like to increase their exposure, would like to increase the publicity, put them on a recognizable podcast. I met Noémi at another networking event, the East Wind Trade Trade Wind that we talked about, and you and I met with Bernie and the team. And so when we met, we thought sort of clicked. I do podcasts, she does Podcast Connections, and we've been we've known each other a couple of years now.
I know. Time flies.
And we thought, okay, why don't we do a podcast on booking people on podcast and why this is important for the audience? A lot of times people say, okay, they see other people doing podcasts. They see how interesting it is. And they say, oh, I'm going to start my own, which is, I highly encourage you. If you want to do that, I highly encourage you, go start your own. But maybe in parallel to that, you may want to get your feet wet first. Get on other people's podcasts. Go get interviewed by other people. Get the feel of it and try to figure out what works for you. What is the message that you want to convey? And once you figure out what your messaging is, maybe you can start your own podcast. So today we're going to talk about Noémi's business. How does she book these people on the podcast? What are the criteria? We'll get into all this. And first, we're going to get to know Noémi first. That's the most important task for me today. So welcome to the channel, Noémi, and sorry for the long intro. I just thought we'd give a little bit of a context for our conversation.
Thank you, Robin. It's a pleasure to be here. And yeah, as you said, it's all started with a podcast. I ended up on a podcast with Bernie and Wayne, ended up in a networking group, and then I met you. So everything goes back to podcast interviews.
That's great. So, Noémi, as we say on this channel, the first question is the easy one, right? So the first question is the story question, I call it. And you know what? I get a lot of compliment on this question. So I'm going to ask you the story question. What is your story? What got you here? Where are you from? How did you get into the business? What's your hopes and desire in this business? Where do you want to take it?
Yeah. And I love that question. It's a deep one. It's a long one for sure. Yeah. So in a nutshell, I was born and raised in Hungary in Central Europe. And I always wanted to discover the world and travel the world. So that's what I did when I was 16. And I became an exchange student and I learned Danish and I lived in Denmark. And it started there. Everything started there because I knew that this is the first time that I'm getting out of the country, basically to leave all by myself, experience a new culture. And that somehow encouraged me to live in different cultures and experience different places. And that's how I ended up living in Ireland first for 7 years. And then where I became basically an entrepreneur because I never wanted to have my own boss. I realized that after, working 3 years for a company, and I realized that leadership is not the best there. And if I'm running a company, the leadership team isn't going to be like this. So I decided okay, I would love to be an entrepreneur with no sales or marketing background whatsoever, because I had a degree in Scandinavian studies. I have a master's degree in Scandinavian studies. I'm a linguist by trade, but it sounded so interesting and fascinating to be an entrepreneur. And then it's okay, let's do it. And that's how I became an entrepreneur back in 2007, back in Ireland. And I ended up working in the travel industry. I had an online travel related business up till 2020, which I really enjoyed. I was into content creation, social media marketing, online marketing. It was a fun, story and part of my life. But as so many things happened, the pandemic happened in 2020. So had to pivot and start a new company from scratch because the travel industry collapsed. And that's how I ended up working in the podcasting world, in the wonderful world of podcasting, thanks to a mentor we had. And we started this new venture basically back in April 2020 and started to work with entrepreneurs, business owners from the US, Canada, UK, and to help them to get booked on quality podcast shows. And it was a huge shift from working in the travel industry, ended up in the podcasting world. But I truly believe that everything happens for a reason. And I always wanted to switch and try out a new career. And I love this because I can connect amazing people with each other, amazing podcast hosts with each other. And it's so much fun. And, it brings me joy to work for myself and to help and serve people.
And, I love that, to help and to serve people. It's pretty interesting because a lot of people need help. And specifically on a topic that everybody seems to gravitate to, because the world, and I'm not speaking about a specific industry, when we see something that works, you feel like all the masses are driving toward that. So I remember, I'm an old guy, so I'm an old guy. I mean, people call me old. I don't feel old, but people call me old. But let's say I'm old. When the internet started, everybody went to, get a website. When the website, and we fast forward till today, and everybody's talking about artificial intelligence because everybody wants to do what everybody else is doing. Podcasting is the same idea. You mentioned something very interesting. Quality podcast. In your opinion, and you're an agency that selects podcast hosts or podcast channels to put your customers, which they trust you, on those podcasts. What makes a quality podcast in your opinion?
Yeah, that's another very good question. First of all, we always in the search for quality podcasts, which means they are usually in the top 10% of podcasts worldwide. We have our tools and softwares to check, how many visitors, how many followers they have, what about their social media following. Obviously, when it comes to podcasts, you don't have exact numbers. Those are not really public unless the host shares them. But we try to get as much as information about the podcast as possible. So they should be in the top 10% or less. It's important because we know there's always a magic number around episode 6 and 7, so many podcast stops and they just can't do it anymore. So for us, it's really important. They have a certain number of episodes to start with. What I do so many times that I get on a show and I'm kind of the guinea pig. If it's in my topic. So I would love to get on the show and see how it works, how it treats people, because I always want the best for my clients. So it's really, really important to get to know the podcast host. If I can get on the show, I have a chat with the podcast host. And I think that's crucial, especially now with the age of AI, that we show our faces. They know the person behind the company. I know the person behind the podcast. And I think it's really important to set up some kind of relationship that I trust the podcast host to have those conversations with my clients. And once we establish the relationship with them, it's just so much easier to work with the podcast host. So for me, it's really important to have that kind of quality experience when I get on a chat with the host, when we have like a 15-20 minute conversation and we feel that our energy and everything aligns. So then I'm relaxed and I'm happy, so I can send my clients to those, to those places. So I think that's really important. And that's much more important than download numbers and everything else, because if the guest has a great experience, they will talk about that show. They will share that episode on social media with other people. And that's how you promote an episode. And that's how, news travel around the globe and people talk. And they exchange ideas and opinions about the different podcasts.
Very interesting. Also, you said something about in the tagline of your company when I was doing the research, meaningful conversations change lives. What do you mean by that? That's not a marketing line. This is knowing you for so many, for a couple of years now, and we've talked so many times. It feels like it reflects who you are as a person. But what does it exactly mean to you and to your customers?
Everybody has a story to share.
And I know that.
You know that by now, 200 something episodes. So we all have these interesting stories and we learn so much from each other. And I truly believe that if we can help only one person who is listening today with some kind of advice, that's already a win for me. And I think that's the most important. Like, we share these stories, but these stories are so important to other people. They learn from each other and we'll learn from each other. Even if you're a host or you're a guest, it doesn't matter. It's about exchanging knowledge and enriching people's lives by exchanging these amazing stories, which wouldn't have happened if there was this interview. And that's the magic, and that's where the magic happens.
I'm very surprised at so many podcasters out there, and I don't know if they all have the same, I want to say, standard. Obviously not, because I've interviewed so many people on the show, and people that I've known before and people I never met before. I mean, the first time I interview people in a lot of cases are brand new to me. And I noticed something, and I don't know if you agree with this. When the conversation starts, they're very cold, they're closed. Like you can feel like their arms are, crossed, and they just don't want to give any information. And as soon as I start engaging with them, like 1 or 2, 3 questions, they start laughing, cracking jokes. They start giving away information. And they start being engaged in the conversation. And when I asked, at the end of the conversation, I normally ask the guests, like, how do you feel about this conversation? They feel like very relaxed. And that's what they tell me. Like, I mean, you can go through the entire 259 episode that I got. Very relaxed. They feel like the questions were substantive question where they actually addressed the topic. Like, I've got one guy, I mean, I never interviewed these types of individuals before. And I don't know how I did this, to be honest with you. One doctor, he's like the top neurosurgeons in the US.
Wow.
Somebody put him on the show. He specialized in neurosurgery, spine cord neurosurgery. They do spine cord fusion.
Yeah.
for paraplegic, etc. And the individual wants to get on the show, and he's in OR all the time. He's like one of the well thought after doctors, and he's like the busiest doctor. So he comes into the show with his gear
Scrubs.
on, like the OR gear on. He still have the garments and all that stuff on, and he opens his laptop and he's on my show. I'm thinking, wow, this is great. So I'm having a conversation with him about a neurosurgery. I don't know how I would talk about a neurosurgery. I'm not a neurosurgeon. It's not my domain. But I've done enough research on the topic that the doctor felt this is really on topic. I mean, that's the idea of any podcast. You got to be on topic. You got to do your homework, right? I do that. I feel like I do that. I don't know, but I feel like I do that. And because if the guest feel disconnected from the conversation, it's not a good experience.
No, not at all. And I agree with that with you, Robin, 100%. For me, the most memorable interviews were the one where the host did research. And you could feel it because you felt welcomed and respected, that they took the time. Maybe they read your book, they checked your LinkedIn page, they checked your website, and they had a lot of information about you. And it just feels so good. Why? Because you feel seen, heard, and valued by the podcast hosts. And that creates a whole different atmosphere when it comes to the podcast interview. I think that's crucial. Like, you feel so much better and open. And that's why they were cracking jokes, because you felt them seen, heard, and valued during the conversation. And it makes, I think, a huge difference. And it also, when it comes to a podcast guest, it's the same experience. Like, they also need to do their homework and get ready for the interview. And I always tell them and encourage people to listen at least one episode before, the interview starts, because that's so important. You can have an idea about the podcast host, feeling the energy, what's going on during conversations, what type of questions the host usually asks. And I think that's really important. So it goes both ways, host and the guest as well.
100%. Couldn't agree with you more, because you said, something very important, as the guest needs to do something to contribute to this. And you started the conversation by saying, like, this is a dialogue between two people. And I've seen, my, how long I've been doing this now, seeing guests, they come in and they're expecting it to be a service, like I'm rendering a service to them. And it just feels wrong to me, because they make me feel like I am supposed to be serving them, and they're coming into a conversation with me, and it's supposed to be a dialogue. Like, I keep telling people, like, we're coming to have a coffee together, right? This is my Starbucks coffee. And so we're coming to have a coffee together. And imagine yourself, and I keep telling them, this is the context. Imagine yourself, you and I, not on camera, sitting at Starbucks, having a coffee together. How would you interact with me?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not being paid to interview you. This is one thing. And just for those out there, this is something I do out of my volunteer work, if you will, for humanity. I don't know what it is, but I enjoy doing it. I enjoy the conversation. Nobody's paying me to interview anybody. And Noémi can attest to that. I mean, you don't pay your podcasters, do you?
No. I wish I could, but I don't.
This is the thing. Like, when a guest comes in and they feel like they're not, I feel like they're not interacting because I don't know what it is, the wrong perception, or they come in with the wrong context. And the second thing is, which is very important in the podcasting world, which I keep talking the guests about, is, and you said something like in your work goes beyond bookings, which is very important. After you do the conversation with the podcaster, there's a lot of homework that needs to be done, correct?
Exactly. And in my opinion, when you stop the, recording, that's where the magic happens, because that's when you can organize a chat with the host, like a, post-interview chat. So you can figure out how to help, how to serve each other. And it's one of the best networking tools. Like, podcast interviews right now in the 21st century are the best networking tools on the planet, because once you establish the relationship, you had a great conversation with the host, and that's the start of basically a relationship between you and the guest, the host and the guest. And you can start anything together. Like, you can even become each other's business partners, friends, anything is possible. It's really up to, many times, up to the guest to send a thank you note after the interview ends. And yeah, just be proactive, like get out there and send an email to the host, ask them like, is it okay if we, jump on a call, maybe 20, 30 minutes, so we can figure out how to help each other, what we can do, together, or I can recommend you other podcast guests, or you can recommend me other podcasts. Like there are so many and endless opportunities. And as you said, Robin, everything starts after we recorded the episode. We just need to use that wisely. And of course, the social media angle is so important because sharing is caring, and sharing the episode on social media and tagging the host is another form of caring for the podcast host and being respectful with their time and energy, because you are not paid to do this. Like it's part of your business, but it's not like nobody's becoming a millionaire because they have a podcast. Like you can use it in certain ways to put it in your funnel, but other than that, it's usually it's just up to the host and their like kind of curiosity of the world and the guest and the stories they share.
Like one of the things that really tick me off sometimes, and I don't get ticked off often because I'm a patient man, is I remember this, not, I've had a few of them, but in recent memory, I interviewed somebody who is the chief technology officer for a tech company out of Dubai. And I'm not going to name any names. If you identify yourself after this conversation, maybe you feel guilty after it. I don't care. I've done the interview, I've done the work, I've done the research. I think I had a great interview with that individual. It's like dead silence after the interview. After the publication, never connected on LinkedIn, never pushed the episode, never even tagged me. They didn't even connect with me personally on LinkedIn. And I've got 31,000 followers on LinkedIn. Like it's missed opportunity, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like if you think, you're doing me a favor, I think you're doing yourself a favor. I don't need another one single connection to really, increase my life on LinkedIn. That's not what I need. It's good. And I'm not saying no to it, but it helps the guest quite a bit. Because, if you, and I know, Noémi, you select these podcasts, and that's my next question. You talk about the right voice in the right room. So you probably do a lot of profiling on your guests. Can you talk a little bit about that? Can you elaborate this? How do you profile your guests and match them to them?
First of all, we always start with a strategy call once they sign up with us. And I think that's very crucial to get to know them and be super clear about their, bios, who they are as entrepreneurs, who they are as human, and who they are, like, what kind of topics they talk about. And we need to get to know them inside out, basically, before we pitch them to any kind of podcast host, because that's crucial. Like before, this conversation needs to happen. And it's usually an hour-long conversation when we deep dive into everything, what they did before and what they want to talk about, and who their ideal client is, and who their ideal reader is if they are an author. So it's part of the profiling, the strategical profiling. It's just, without that, you can't really pitch them to anyone. It's because how can you pitch someone to a podcast host that, like, if you don't even know your own clients? And that's a must to every entrepreneur. And not just like we talk and tell them what we do, but listening and asking those questions and get all that information out of them, so we can share that with the podcast host. So I think that's just really important. That's the first and most important step.
Do you ask to deal directly with the person who is going to be the guest? Or a lot of times what happens is, and this is my experience, I'm not sure if it's on your side too, Noémi, a CEO of a large company or CEO of a mid-sized company, and, they don't want to deal directly with what they call the vendor in this case, which... I shake my head and I roll my eyes 16 times over for this. And they send, a PR company, or they send their marketing agency or their marketing person internally to deal with this. And you're dealing with 3 layers of conversation. Does that make your life a little bit more difficult?
I think it does. That's why we don't really work with large organizations. Like we tried, but it just doesn't work. They can't even decide who they want to send on a podcast to talk as a guest. Like it takes them a month to decide. That's why it's so good to work just entrepreneurs and business owners, because it makes our life easier. And as you said, we always encourage the clients, the guests, to get in touch with the podcast host before the interview. Obviously, we provide them with a done for you service. So we organize everything. So we book to schedule everything. We send all the information, the bios, the topics, everything is there for the host. But we always encourage them, like, if you have any questions, if you want to ask something, yeah, please do contact the host. You have their contact details, usually email address. And I think that's important to establish some kind of relationship and connect on LinkedIn before the interview starts, because you can also gather some information about each other once you are connected on LinkedIn. I think that's really important. And I would encourage everyone who is listening today to reach out to the host before the interview, do your research, check their profile, send a message to them. And it's so different when you get on the call. It's like you know them already.
You know what you just gave me an idea right now, because I think there's a need out there to teach people how to get on a podcast. And I think you and I can pull together a webinar where we can invite a whole bunch of people to it and who are interested in becoming a guest on a webinar to learn a few tricks. One of the things I notice all the time is, I love dealing with you because you do a lot of homework when you send me a guest, and I feel like the profile is complete. I've got all the data, I've got all the information that I need to pull together an episode. It doesn't come easy, guys. I mean, you think we just open the mic and you start talking? Okay, good luck with that. There's a lot of research that goes into that. And Noémi, like, I really loved the pitch that you sent me because it's complete. I can see the profile of the individual. I can see the story. I can see what I want to talk about, what we need to talk about. But many people, they come in and they are making the same mistake. They pitch the wrong topic. And perhaps the topic, not the conversation. That's another one too. You're coming onto a podcast to do a conversation, not an infomercial. And I keep telling people, this is not an infomercial. This is a conversation. So we're going to have a conversation, and through the conversation, fine, we can talk about your product, your services, your company. That's okay. But we're not an infomercial. And when I talk about an infomercial, I don't know why I remember this one, Naomi. Do you remember this one where, but wait, the guy was selling like kitchen appliances on television, but wait, there is more. And then they offer another bonus. I'm not doing this.
Yeah, because I think it's so important to realize that it's not like podcast interviews are not promotional platforms. You are here to share knowledge. You are here to share your story and educate people. They can learn from you. And of course, there's always a place and time during the conversation when the host will ask you, can you share your website? What do you do? And we always share information about our work because it's not separated, it's intertwined. But it shouldn't be about selling your product, because people won't listen to those conversations. Like, this is not an ad or, as you said, infomercial. Like, it's so much more than that. So if you want to keep your audience happy, you need to give them information and knowledge. Otherwise, they will tune out. There are millions of podcasts out there. They're doing that.
And I'm surprised, to be honest with you. And this is not knock on anybody. I mean, we're all human being. We're all learning. We're all trying to do better. We're all trying to improve. But I do get surprised in some cases, like the new entrepreneurs and the just startup companies, and they want to get on a podcast. To be honest with you, I help. It's like I'm adopting somebody, and I want to help them through the conversation, and I take it easy in my questions, and I formulate my conversation in a way that fits that particular personality, because I judge that. And as a host, you have to do that. You got to calibrate your conversation to the guest that you're talking to. So in a lot of cases, though, I'm surprised, like CEO of mid-sized company or a large organization, I ask a simple question, like, what does your company do? Or what is your product? How can it solve? What problem does it solve? That's very basic stuff. And they have not yet honed in on the pitch. Like, they don't know how to tell the story yet. In fact, I interviewed somebody from South Africa about specializes in telling and helping people tell their story. What is your story? You need to have that compelling story. And somebody told me this a long time ago. He says, Robin, imagine you get in the elevator with somebody. You have 5 floors to go up, and somebody asks you a question in the elevator. What do you do? If you can't articulate it in those 5 story up, you don't have it right. You got to get it right. And so the people come in on the podcast, and I appreciate that. Like, I mean, maybe it's their first time, but they must have had conversation about what they do before, not just on the podcast. They must have had that idea before.
Absolutely. Yeah. And And that's what I love. Like, make it as simple as possible. I'm a huge fan of Donald Miller's Story Brand podcast, and he makes everything so simple. And I learned so much from him, like even just pitching myself to companies or to people. Like, just if you can tell what you do in 3 simple sentences, so, like an 8th grader can understand that, or an old lady down the street, and then you made your job, well. But if you can't, and you just want to sound sophisticated and elevated and I don't know what, like, people won't know what you're doing. And, people, when they are listening to podcasts, they are on the go. They are in the gym, they're cooking, they're cleaning, they're walking the dog. So they're not entirely maybe tuned in. So if you are like, you're telling your story, or like who you are, or pitching yourself like in 6, 7, 8, 10 different sentences, they won't have any idea what this person is doing. And then again, they tune out because they have no idea what you're doing.
But that happened in real life too, Noémi.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
A lot of people, you ask them, I mean, it's very statistically proven. The most difficult question in the professional life is the following: what do you do? And when you ask somebody, what do you do? And they ramble on, I tuned out.
Yeah.
If I don't get that in a single sentence, that means there's something too complicated for me as a human being to understand. Maybe it's good for you. You understand it. Good for you. But to sell me on that idea, or to make it last in my memory, it needs to be simple. It needs to be consumable. Now, one of the things is that when you work with your customers, Noémi, you probably help them clarify. Do you help them actually clarify their most compelling topics? Or have you ever had to tell somebody, listen, your story needs to be reformulated. Your story needs to be shaped a little bit. Do you help them through that process, Noémi?
Absolutely. Many people need help with that, because they need to understand, like guests need to understand, that this is a conversation and this is not a keynote speech about their life. And it can go on like for 20 minutes, just talking about yourself and your story. So it needs to be condensed. It needs to be in a certain sweet spot. So people won't get bored with it, but it's exciting to listen to it. So yeah, we do. Yeah. To answer your question, they need help, a lot of them. Some people who did podcast interviews before, they're very good with that. But I would say 80% of the people always need to work on their stories and figure it out, because nobody taught us at school like how to how to tell stories. We all have those stories, but it's not that easy to formulate them in a way that everybody understands it. So yeah, you might need help with it, and that's absolutely fine. And you can practice it, because it's all about practice, practice, practice. Like, you can practice at home with your partner, with your friends, with your dog, I don't know, with your kid or something, to share your story as many times.
Or 10 podcasts later, it gets better. Or
exactly.
10 podcasts
or
later,
50,
it gets better.
or 50, or 25. And it's just getting better and better. But it takes time, and it's like this podcast guesting muscle you're training. Like, you're going to the gym, you're not going to be Schwarzenegger after 2 weeks. I mean, you have to keep going. You have to, show up consistently, persistently, and do it and practice it.
Now, what I was going to ask you is, speaking of practice, like this week, for instance, for me, for the Localization Fireside Chat, we are recording 6 episodes this week. And
Wow.
We've got another 6 waiting in the queue to be published. And next week, we'll do another 6 or 7. So when people come in on a podcast expecting, oh my God, this is the conversation that's going to make or break my business or my idea. No, it isn't. It is going to help you. It's a step in the process going forward. And I don't know how you feel, but there are many items involved in somebody like going after your services. For instance, if I was a customer looking at your company Podcast Connection to help me get on a podcast, so I'm assuming you're not just booking them on a podcast, you're helping them through other services, providing other services for them to become a little bit more proficient at getting on a podcast. Can you go through these services?
Absolutely. And I think it's really important. And not just about the bios and how well written is it. It's about how you can express yourself, how you can share those topics, how you can talk about your company, and how you can share knowledge in a way that everybody understands that. And we have to go through everything with everyone, basically. And I think that's crucial, because that's how you share your message, and that's how you share your stories. And of course, it takes time, but it's very valuable time to spend on, because that's how you learn, and that's how you can get on those podcasts that are important for your company, and they can share your message and they can help you to grow. Because at the end of the day, podcast guesting is a marketing strategy, and it's a part of relationship marketing strategy. And it's really important to be super clear about your message, about your story. And once you are happy with that, you can just do that, like, even every single day if you want to, and get on these amazing shows like yours and sharing your knowledge with people. And plus, like, never forget to smile. I think that's really important when you get on a show, because people feel that even if they don't watch you, just listen to you, the energy travels. So it's always there. And I think that's just super important.
Yeah, no, it's funny you say smile, because, and the reason I'm smiling is because I feel like I want to say 80-20, 80% of the guests, they come in, they start the conversation with me. They never met me, right? And this is just my personal experience. I don't know how other feels about this one. In the first 5 minutes, they literally think that they are on CNN or something. And, and they have this face that just like, and I'm not saying everybody, I get it. Most people are pleasant, etc. And because I think I'd be in their shoes, and they don't know what to expect. They just never met me before, and they don't know how that conversation gonna. And this is where you told them, and I know you tell this to your customers, is to go listen to the show. And I keep telling them, like, before I turn the recording on, I asked the question. I said, "Have you listened to some of my podcasts before, some of the shows before?" Because that gives you an idea about how this conversation is going to roll, right? And they don't do their homework. I know they don't.
You know that, like, after 2 sentences, they have no clue what kind of show they're on. That's true.
So let's move on to another segment, which is very interesting, Noémi, is that the podcast guesting space has exploded over the last 5 years, as you know. And you're in this business, you're more experienced at this than I am. Now there are probably hundreds of booking agencies. They've got AI tools now to do the booking, the auto pitch, basically, to create all this stuff. And platforms that promise all these services at low cost. So what is being lost in the commoditization of this particular field, in your opinion?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's a current, problem, because when we started, there were podcast booking agencies, and everybody, we all started to find those clients and so on. But when AI came into the picture, and as you said, all these automated messages and emails, the market got so crowded. So you have to stand out somehow. It's like the same as you're a podcast guest, you're pitching yourself, you need to stand out in order to be picked. So it's the same with podcast booking agencies. Most of these agencies that are AI generated, they are not even agencies. They are just, people pushing buttons, AI bots, whatever, sending out these emails. This is the spray and pray technique. Some of them stuck, some of them won't, whatever, they don't care. But I think it's really important to understand that the podcast booking agencies who are reliable and want to stand out, we will get out there, talk to the podcast host, have those conversations, and show our faces to the podcast host. So this is a real person behind the business. I've been living in Cyprus. I've been working with my American
You're not an avatar, Noémi, right?
No, I'm not an avatar. I'm a real person, and like a real human with feelings and everything. And we can work together, and let's have a chat. And I think no matter how much AI we use in the business, we do it too. I'm not against AI. It's important. It helps.
How do you use it? And what part of your business you use it in?
Exactly. But it won't replace the human connection, the human touch. Or I hope so. It won't.
But I don't know if you've seen this, but somebody came in and offered me, and I don't know how real is this. In my head, it's still like fiction to me. Somebody offered me, they said, we can build an avatar like you, and they will do the interview on your behalf. See? I said, excuse me? How does that work? The whole brand revolves around a conversation, like a human-to-human conversation. You're going to replace that? Like, it doesn't work anymore. It's just, to me, it feels like you lose everything when you move it to that kind of an automation.
Yeah. I don't know what the future brings. You never know. But I truly believe the human touch and these connections, these conversations that brings joy to people and brings joy to us when we participate in them, they can be replaced. But we never know, and we don't know where the world goes. We'll see.
I got to ask you this question. Now, when you place these podcast guests, how often are you placing them in podcasts that speaks different languages other than just English?
Well, we don't really do that. It's like it's the
We
main
don't.
our main focus is English. And although we have, like, for example, podcast in Germany or podcast in Scandinavian countries, but everybody speaks English, so the common language is English. So we only use that
We
part.
only
So
use
that's why,
English.
yeah, we only work with English
But you
speaking
said earlier,
clients and
like for
hosts.
you personally, you learned languages for fun, right?
Yeah, I do. That's my free time adventure. I always start my day learning my languages on Duolingo, and I spend at least like 20 minutes every single morning, so I don't lose my streak on Duolingo. And I'm on like 1700 something day on, and I've been learning Spanish, Greek, um, Japanese. That's a new
Yeah, I
one
was going to
now.
ask you. You live in Cyprus. How does the Greek come in?
Well, not well, because everybody speaks English, and they don't even let you to speak Greek because you are
Plus, you live
not
in
from
Paphos.
here.
Probably this is very English-speaking area, right?
It is, and all my neighbors are from different countries, and you can go into restaurants where nobody speaks Greek, which is kind of sad because you are in a Greek-speaking country. But it is what it is. We are very
I know.
multicultural here.
So when you're placing an international client that English is not their first language, like you and me, English is not our first
Yeah,
language.
yeah.
Do you prep them differently, or do you talk to them a little differently, or you just say, "Listen, here's the podcast. Here's what you like. What is your selling method to them from non-English speaking to an English podcast?"
Their English is usually perfect.
Okay,
Sometimes even better than the native speakers. So, and they usually wrote a book or
good.
two.
We can
No
learn a
offense,
thing or two.
no offense, no offense, native speakers, but yeah, they wrote a book or two in English, and they are not native speakers, and they are absolutely fine. So, and yeah, they must have a very good knowledge of English, otherwise they can't really be on podcasts. And I remember my own experience. You talked about your first podcast, and I remember my first podcast, and oh boy, it was a learning curve. That's for sure. It wasn't easy, and because English is not my first language, so sometimes you make mistakes, and sometimes you're upset, and it's like, oh my gosh, how many grammatical errors I made during the conversation. So yeah, but yeah, we had to get over that because we
I
speak different
remember.
languages. So
I don't know if you've done this, but I remember I did as a challenge to myself. I did a podcast in bilingual. The
oh,
guest was in Argentina
right.
and doesn't speak English. And my Spanish, I understand Spanish, but not to the level of being professional at it. So we had a bilingual podcast. I was asking the questions in English, and the guest was speaking in Spanish.
Okay.
And what I did later on is in the post edit is I converted. Well, I did the subtitling in English, obviously, so the audience can now understand it in English. But it was very well received by the audience who speaks Spanish.
Yeah.
And they saw it as a not that closed door. Basically, you can only speak English. No, I can do things in other languages where people know that I speak 3-4 languages. But English is not my first, and Arabic is my first language, obviously, and French is my second one, and English is my third. Now I feel like my French is diluted a little bit because I don't
Yeah.
practice that often.
Right.
But where I saw a lot of positive comment, Noémi, is where the audience thought, from a respect point of view, that I tried, that I gave it a try. Of course, is it perfect? Obviously not. I'm not saying it was perfect, but the idea that I can do a bilingual podcast, and trust me, I can do it in Greek too, by the way. If you have
I can't. I can't.
if you have a French guest, I'll do it in French, or Arabic guest, I've done it. And so the point is, try to go to where the guest is in terms of culture, in terms of language. Try to meet them halfway. And that flexibility, in my opinion, and again, I'm doing this without anybody paying me to do it. This is just my passion of doing it. It's not like people think, oh, I'm going to do a podcast, I'm going to become a millionaire. And I said that before. Not everybody's going to be Joe Rogan, okay? Let me break the news to you. Let me burst your bubble right up front. You're not going to become Joe Rogan.
That's true. And what you said about like just being respectful, but I think that's really important. And also for the guest, I think it's such a great feeling that you treated them with such a respect and use their own language, own native language. I think that's beautiful. And no, and not everybody is going to be very successful. And it applies to be a guest too, because so many people think that they are going to be, they're going to sell hundreds of books after one interview, and they're going to have hundreds of clients out of one single episode. But I always keep telling people, like, yeah, this is not just rainbows and butterflies here. So it's like you have to do podcast guesting for at least a couple of months to see the results, because this is not overnight success. 100%. People won't recognize in the street because you were on 2 interviews or something like that. So you need to do it persistently, showing up consistently on different podcasts, sharing those interviews on social media. It's important. Like, it's the same for podcast hosts. We're not going to be millionaire, either a host or a guest, overnight.
Now, we've talked a little bit about this one, where most people connect with stories, as you know. I mean, we've been talking about this one. Stories are very important. It sticks to the brain from a cognitive perspective. From a listener perspective, it's easier to remember a story versus a specs on a product. Nobody remember that. But if you connect it to a human story, obviously it resonates with people. A lot of people that I work with, and a lot of people that you work with, they come from that entrepreneurial background where, they're a startup, they're proud of what they built, they're proud of their product, they're proud of the service that they're offering, or a book or an idea, whatever that is, they're attached to. And they speak very fluently about this one. They speak very intelligently about the product and service that they offer. But they haven't really connected it to and I keep asking this question, I put it into almost every episode. What is the problem and how you're solving to that problem? What is the issue that you're trying to solve to? And connect it to the human level, if you don't mind. And I keep asking the guests. But I guess from an ROI perspective and the investment, I think you get a lot of questions about this. And I love how you said it. You got to do this for at least 2-3 months consistently in order to get the word out. You're not going to get this solved by one particular episode on a specific show. You got to do this multiple times. Do you run through that, or do you have like some projections that you give the guest number-wise?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't want to put them in kind of this dream position that, of course, like you will get everything after all those interviews. No, you have to show up. You have to do your work as a guest as well, because that's one thing that the host will promote the episode, but you have to put yourself out there. You have to work for it as well. And as you said, your story, nobody's really interested in your story and in you as a person. They are interested in how it affects them, how it can help them.
How it relates to them too, right?
How it relates to them, how it aligns with them. They're not interested in Noémi, who came from Hungary and, did this and did that and became an entrepreneur and then, started a new business. Like, oh, that's cool. But it's not about me. It's about them. It's always about the client. It's always about the listener. This is how, the whole sales world works. And
you need to resonate. I mean, the story needs to resonate, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, from a guest perspective, do you have any success stories that you could share with us?
Absolutely. And, I love sharing those. And some of them are not ROI related, as you know, because it's not about that. Like when it comes to guesting, you can't measure it like with numbers. Like this is not an Instagram ad or Facebook ad. But it happened to me actually just a few weeks ago. One of my longstanding clients, she is a very known LinkedIn expert. She is great. I love her to bits. She was one of our first clients we started to work with back in 2020. And she'd been with us for many years. Then she stopped when AI took over the whole place. She had to regroup and rebrand and do things and needed to be done because of AI. And a couple of weeks ago, she saw one of my LinkedIn posts and she's following me on LinkedIn and, she likes my post. And then we got on a chat and I had no idea. And she wants to come back and work again. And just to continue our, business relationship together and get her on big shows. And then she told me, it's like, what I love about guesting? I love the business opportunities part. I love everything that I can share my message, sell my, books and everything. But the biggest win for me was that I found 2 great friends that I would never met without you, because you connected me with them, amazing podcast hosts. We are working together. We became best friends. And we're living in a community. We need people around us who feel our energy and we can be friends with and support each other. And if we found those people through podcasting, that's a win. And it's not just about book sales, numbers, ROI. It's about those human connections.
Correct. And I have a habit when I do a guest podcast with somebody, I automatically invite them to a networking event that I host on Friday mornings. It's called
Love
the
that.
Global AI Exchange.
Yeah.
And we have a close to about 120 people in there, and so not everybody shows up on Fridays. If Fridays is a bad day for meetings, but we get about 20 to 30 people on the on the network. And the reason I do that is because I know psychologically why people come on podcast. They want to create a connection, they want to create a conversation, and extending that conversation to a larger network of other people that perhaps were guests on my show, and they end up on the networking site or a networking event. It expands that conversation. And to be honest with you, very few people they realize the impact of that, right? So some people do, and they come in and they become fixed members of the networking event. But the idea that you just mentioned, which is I really highly encourage it to everybody who are guests or want to be guests on shows, is expand the conversation where the opportunity leads you. Okay. Now I know a lot of people out there, they're saying, what's the profile of the listener? What's the profile of the individual that I'm going to be networking with? Yeah, I get that. And you can sit down and you can chart the profile and you can systematically diagnose each profile who does not fit my product. So therefore I don't want to be part of that conversation. That's the old thinking. You need to have those conversations anyway to get you to that specific profile that you're looking for. You need the bridge to get you there. Oh, if you're going to sit down and look for it in that needle, and we call it in the United States and Canada, we call it the needle in the haystack. If you are looking for that needle in the haystack, you know what? You're going to be looking for a while. So you probably don't need podcasting. You need a microscope, a business microscope, to get you to that needle in the haystack. I highly encourage everybody, engage. Whatever you possibly open for you to be engaged, go ahead, engage with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And use LinkedIn, because I'm always like a spokesperson for LinkedIn, but it helped me tremendously to build my business, to thrive in business, and to get in touch with people that are in the same space as you. It's like you have 30 something thousand followers, and that's amazing. And you're building up that network and nurturing those relationships. And it's not about just numbers, okay, I got this or that numbers, but nurturing those relationships, having those conversations with people. And I can't even tell you, Robin, how many podcast opportunities I got because people got in touch with me, like podcast hosts send me a message I saw on this podcast, can you get on my show? Or can you share that message with my audience to of course, I'm happy to do that. This is how it works. This is how social media works.
So do you find it yourself personally? Do you find being on the shows, like what we're doing right now, does it help you?
Absolutely. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't waste my time here, anywhere, being guests on podcasts. One thing, I truly enjoy being a guest. I know some people are, they don't like listening to their own voice, or they just, it's not their thing. They're shy and they have all these interesting ideas about their own voice, their own body language and everything that they don't like and they have to learn. But I think it really helped me. So many times I got on a show and the host hired me after the conversation. It's oh, Noémi, it's would you be happy if I can, can I work with you? Can I promote my own podcast on other people's podcasts? And I would love to go on those shows. It's of course, let's do it. We already established a relationship. And plus, I build my credibility during these conversations. People type my name into Google, AI search, whatever. I pop up everywhere because I've been doing podcast guesting in the past 6 years. So you become an authority in your field. And without podcasting right now, it's really hard to do that.
Yeah, 100%. And so here's an honest question for you on my side. I've been asking myself this question, and asking as much of me asking the question, and I'm asking this on behalf of the audience as they look at me and they say, okay, look at the channel. We've got 30 years of stories. I've been doing this business thing, not just a podcast, 30 years of business adventure, I would call it, not stories, plus my fractional practice, the business company that I own, and 49 Networks. And I'm working on a memoir book called the From the Ashes of Beirut to the Boardroom. And I haven't had a chance to finish it yet. I'm almost there, but still working, work in progress. So if I come to you as a client tomorrow, what would you tell me about the gap between what I think my message is and what I think the audience are actually looking for or wants to hear from me? What would you advise me?
I think your book, your upcoming book, the memoir you're writing, I think that could be really powerful, because this is one message that can really show people that, like from Beirut, that little boy who started the journey there and ended up being this successful entrepreneur in Canada, and speak several languages. You have so many businesses, and you can do it too. And especially, I think, for younger generation, like getting on shows that, like, you teach kind of this leadership example to other people, and to younger generation as well, that, like, if I could do it, you can do it too, with consistency, with persistency. You can do that if you put the time, energy, and money, and money into everything that you do. And I think your story would really inspire people, and especially leadership podcast, leadership spaces. So yeah, I can totally see you on different amazing podcasts. Robin.
Thank you for the vote of confidence, Noémi. I feel energized today. I know it's Wednesday, but it feels like Monday morning. I feel energized today. Maybe the coffee. So as we get closer to the recording time, and I don't want to take too much of your time, I know you're busy. I have a few small questions toward as we wrap it up here. And what is the one thing most podcast guests do first, the 5 minutes in an interview, that quietly kills the episode? What do you think?
They are not listening and not fully present. And maybe they're concentrating on the next question or how to reply to something. And I think it's to be fully present is crucial when you are a guest. So you be present, forget about the rest of the world for that 30 minutes, 1 hour, and be present.
And Noémi, if you had to leave the audience with one thing from our conversation today, one idea that it probably meaningful conversation that they would act on before their next interview, what would it be, do you think?
Always add value to the conversation, because that's how you improve, that's how you can help the audience, and that's how you become an authority in your own field.
And where can people find you, Noémi, learn about the Podcast Connection Agency, and or reach out if they want to work with you?
Please visit our website. It's podcastconnections, plural.co. And you can reach out through our website. And I'm always on LinkedIn. So if you type my name in, Noémi Beres, and there's a tiny microphone sign next to my name, connect with me. Let's have a chat.
And if anybody wants to connect to Noémi and you can't find her for any reason, although she's available everywhere, and I see her popping out on every social media, she's very well versed in social media, so you shouldn't be able not to see Noémi. You should be able to find her. But if you can't, just reach out to me and I'll be happy to make an introduction. She's one of the best, in my opinion, and I've had many agencies book guests on my show. You are one of the best ones I've worked with, and I really appreciate the relationship that we created over the couple of years together. So
thank you so much for your kind words and support, Robin. It's a pleasure working with you. It's always a joy.
I really enjoyed this conversation. Hopefully it was okay for you.
Likewise, absolutely. It's this is what I'm talking about, like a friendly conversation with two people, and we shared knowledge with the audience.
Absolutely. And for the audience, I want to thank you so much. First, thank our guest for her generous time with me today, Noémi Beres. Thanks so much for joining me. I really appreciate the conversation. It's very well-timely conversation. This is where the world is heading, that entire podcast conversation. I hope this helped somebody out there who are thinking or considering to become a podcast host or podcast guest specifically. And you can reach out to Noémi Beres for further information on how to become a guest on shows. Very important for your business. For the audience, I want to thank you so much for joining me on YouTube. If you're watching us on YouTube, thanks for watching. If you're listening in on our podcast audio channels, thanks for listening in. And if you're browsing through the blog post where I summarize all these conversations in an archivable form where you can research, you can go back to other episodes and see what we did in the past. And if you want to get an idea, if you are a guest or thinking about being a guest, you may want to check out the site. It's robinayoub.blog where you can find all the information. Also, I want to put a plug to our WPA app where you can see all the content in a single location. It's app.l10nfiresidechat.com, where you can see the videos, the audios, and read the blog all in one location. You don't have to Google us anymore. You can just go to the WPA app and you can add it to your mobile home screen, or where would you like to have easy access to things. So from me and my guest, Noémi Beres, thank you so much for helping us record episode 259. And I see you guys at the next episode. Thanks. Bye.